My friends, I'm having a Kylie Kelsey moment. And what I mean by that is Kylie Kelsey is quoted for saying, I have no business being here, or I have no business talking to this person. And that's exactly how I feel sharing with you this guest. She is absolutely incredible. And our conversation was so great, covering all of the things. I am talking with one of my podcast clients, Haley Dillon, who is a mom of 3 little kids, an actress, and a NASCAR wife. Her husband, Ty Dillon, races NASCAR, and it was so fun chatting with Haley about her stories and what she's passionate about. We talked about mom life, and then she gave us a little bit of insight into behind the scenes of NASCAR, which was really, really cool. To no surprise, at least I shouldn't have been surprised when I chatted with Haley in early February. We got introduced to each other through a mutual friend. Shout out to Chelsea. Absolutely grateful for connecting Haley and I together, because Haley was at a Bible study, I believe, or she met Chelsea through a Bible study, talking about a dream on her heart of starting a podcast for NASCAR wives to share about themselves, their journeys, and the behind the scenes of being a NASCAR wife. Chelsea then connected Haley and I together at the beginning of February, and we connected. It felt so serendipitous. I don't know if that's the right word, but we got to producing her show, Believe in the Good, with Haley Dillon, where Haley is hosting this podcast both on YouTube and on anywhere that you listen to podcasts, sharing the stories and having just really good, high quality conversations with incredible women. I got to interview Haley today, and this has been such a gift. Haley I shared this on my Instagram, you guys, that God truly winks. And when those little full circle moments, God winks, happen, there just has to be given credit where credit is due. Because in 2023, 2024, when the Luke Combs album came out, The Kind of Love We Make was a song that was on repeat in our household over and over and over again. And sometimes I really just like to stream music through the TV, and I cannot tell you how many times that music video has been playing, blasting in our living room. And the actress that is in that music video is Haley Dillon. And after we had gotten connected, so with podcast production right now, because I have such a limited availability for new clientele, I do a call with everybody to really make sure like I'm a good fit for them, they're a good fit for me, it's going to be something I enjoy producing for. And after that call, of course, we follow each other on social media, and I'm looking through Haley's posts and I'm seeing the Luke Combs video, and I'm like, wait a minute. And that song held such a special place in my husband and I's heart. And then to be like, okay, of all the people in the world, I got connected to somebody who was in the music video for that. Am I gushing? Am I fangirling? Yeah, I am a little bit. So I really hope that you enjoyed this interview with me and Haley Dillon. Welcome to Living in Sync. This is a wellness and lifestyle podcast for ladies in their 30s. We've got a lot going on, and on this show, we're going to talk about it all. I'm your host, Joelle. If you're into health, wellness, fitness, beauty, fashion, business, career, time management hacks, organization, girl chats, goal setting, mom things, and everything in between, I hope this show supports you in whatever you need today. Let's dig into today's episode. Welcome, my friends, to the Living in Sync podcast. I have a special guest, as you guys have already heard me gushing about her pre-intro. Haley, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. So grateful for having met you. So glad that we've had this journey and you've helped me start my podcast. So it's an honor to be on yours.
Oh my gosh. The honor seriously is all mine. Everybody listening now already has heard the banter gush of how we got connected and a little bit about your podcast. But I want to dive in today hearing about you. And as like we've talked about and they've heard about that, you are a NASCAR wife, but you are so many other things. And we'll get to where you're at in life now and all that you juggle. But I want to hear about you pre-love story of meeting Ty. Where did you grow up? What did you love to do when you were younger? How did you imagine your life panning out? And did you ever see like NASCAR wife on the horizon for you?
Yeah, so I grew up in Snohomish, Washington, about half an hour outside of Seattle. And I was raised in just a very, very different environment than NASCAR, but we did race as a hobby. When I was growing up, it's funny, I always say my dream was always to be an actress, and I didn't really even realize that was what I was doing until I was a little older. But I would put on these performances. I had this green microphone, and we had a fireplace that sort of was a half circle mantle into our living room, and we had one light bulb over our fireplace. So it
Oh
was
my
like my
gosh.
stage, and
Yeah.
I would stand on our brick mantle and put on performances with my green microphone. And I just wanted to be a star, and I wanted to be the actress that little girls looked up to like I did. It was such a dream of mine, and something that I would drag my mom to these modeling and acting scouting meetings in Seattle that I had looked up in the newspaper and online you know, when you had dial up and were trying to figure out, like, how can I become an actress as this 9-year-old at my computer? And when I was 4 years old, my brothers, for Christmas morning, they got quarter midgets. We like round the corner, you come down around the corner to see what Santa brought. And they had got quarter midgets. And so these are a style of car, like a little go-kart, and we would race all over the country. So we would travel, but it was just a hobby. I mean, growing up for me, I was involved in every single school performance you could get me in. I recently learned that I'm an Enneagram 7, and it really was ringing true even as a little kid because I was on a unicycle team. I played every single sport that my school offered. I was auditioning for every single play that they had. I was in the ASB. I was the class president in 8th grade, and then went on through high school doing the same stuff, wanting to do performances and plays and just anything I could get my hands on. I was just constantly dabbling in 100 different things. And so it was interesting when I went off to college. I wanted to have that experience. I went to Washington State University. I rushed. I was in a sorority. I mean, like I said, still trying to get my hands on everything that I can get involved in the school. And I wanted to go to a performing arts college, but it was humble times for my family. It was when I graduated high school, it was 2010. So
Mm,
things
yeah.
were, money was tight, and it was wherever I could get any type of scholarships, which I didn't get many because I was not your scholarly student.
Same,
I
same.
tried hard. Yeah, I tried very hard, but C's get degrees, and I made my way into Washington State. But anyway, I was wanting to do something with performing arts, but my parents were like, well, what would be a practical way to pursue that? And so they were like, well, what about broadcast news? And I was the person in broadcast, like I kind of ran my senior year that broadcast news department in school. Like I thought, okay, anything to get me on TV.
Yeah.
And I quickly learned when I got into those communication courses that that was not going to be for me. I was not the person that wanted to deliver the news. I wanted to be the person that, you hand me a script and you say, okay, be Dixie, the bartender, which is a character I'm playing right now, which is really fun. I wanted to be some else in a way. That was the fun part, was sort of being able to work hard to embody this completely different character. And so I learned broadcast news was not for me.
Yeah.
And I was struggling with it. I was at school kind of, how am I going to navigate this isn't what I want to do. What else should I do? So I was exploring different options. Washington State was a 5 hour drive from home for me. So I was going home a lot. I was missing home. I really embraced the first couple years of college, but Wazoo is a bit of a rowdy school, really fun. I definitely partied and had a good time, but I was just over it. I wanted to live closer to home. So I was transferring. I had applied and was going to transfer home and go to UW. And I was looking at apartments and had a couple friends that went there and thought, well, maybe we could get a place. And then that was when Ty was really talking to me a lot. And little backstory, we would travel all over the country racing, and it was just a hobby. And my brothers did want to pursue racing. They did want to pursue it at the level of NASCAR, not really knowing what that would entail, but they had seen some people do it. And so we traveled all over, like I said, and this ages us, but one of my brothers, my middle brother, Nick, I have two older brothers and a little sister. My middle brother, he found it in the newspaper in '07, this summer shootout at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And my brothers were racing legends at that time. I raced a little growing up as a kid, but once they got into the bigger stuff, it was like I wanted to do cheerleading and all these different, I got involved in, like I said, lots of school activities. But that summer of '07, we rented a house in Charlotte and we parked. We got the second stall of the garage for the summer, 6 weeks, I think is what it was, 6 or 8 weeks of that summer. Stall number two and stall number one was the Dillons. And Ty's brother raced a little bit. He was in some other series that summer.
How old were you at this point in the summer?
So at this point, I turned 15 that summer.
Okay, so it's like you had met when you were 15, but you still went on and you took us all the way to college. But
Yep.
the context of like you guys had met, that's where you're bringing us back to now, is when you were younger and how you guys met. Yeah.
So we had known each other. That summer, my brothers hung out with him a lot and they just thought he was really funny. We were, bored to death when we weren't racing. So it was like, what are we going to do? And my brothers, Ty and one of his friends, Adam, he was kind of the one little person that he is still really good friends with my brother, and he was good friends with Ty. Thank God for Adam Brown. He was one of those, when you can look back at your story and you're like, God had placed so many people into your story. Adam was one of them. But my brothers would go when they would hang out with Ty. Ty was like, come back to my house. They went and they went swimming. And one night they were playing Guitar Hero. And I remember my brothers coming home at midnight that night and just dying laughing because they were saying how funny he was, all this stuff. They were telling us about playing Guitar Hero and how Ty was being funny. I don't know. And I didn't think anything of it. I literally never even looked his way, never thought he's a boy I could date, nothing at all. But it was funny too, because we always joke that he was this little chunky, was this tall on me, had braces. He was just a totally different little boy, And so it didn't even cross my mind. He certainly was she's a cute girl. And he says, he was okay, yeah, he definitely remembered me. So then fast forward, I'm in college, and my freshman year of college, my brother, Nick, he wanted to move out to North Carolina to try and pursue the NASCAR dream. So he lived with Adam. And he lived here for 10 months, and he quickly learned that it was going to be like winning a lottery. I mean, it truly is incredibly difficult. They are the best drivers in the world, in my opinion, and there are 40 of them, So he wanted to pursue that, and he was trying to get a job in NASCAR as a race car driver. He did not want to be on a crew. He didn't want to do anything different. So it was really difficult. He was learning that. But in that journey of 10 months, he would hang out. He was living with Adam, and he would hang out with Ty. And a couple times they hung out, and Ty was like, I remember your sister. I vividly remember. And he had my senior picture. He was like, when I saw your senior picture, I was like, I'm going to marry that girl. And he told my brother, I'm gonna marry your sister one day. And Nick was just like, whatever, dude, you're, you know, keep dreaming. And then he got Facebook. Ty got Facebook and he had 3 Facebook friends. It was like my brothers and Adam. And he just basically got it, I think, so that he could message me. And so that was when he kind of started messaging me, was when Nick was there. And I kind of came back to the forefront of his like, oh yeah, your sister, I remember, and yada yada. And so then he would message me all the time. And at one point, I remember looking back and seeing he had sent me 9 messages in a row that I hadn't replied to, but he was persistent. And I was like, okay. I never had the heart to just be like, leave me alone or anything. I just left it open.
Yeah.
And so finally, I was single, very single. I was like depressed. I was never the girl that like wanted to date a whole bunch of people. And I was wanting to, the next guy I date, I wanted to be my husband. And I had, prayed over that and written down in my journal things that I wanted in a spouse and who the next man that I date I would like to be my husband, all these things, not knowing at all that I was open to that, but I wasn't actively looking for that. And little had I realized that was in my inbox sending me 9 messages.
It's so crazy.
Not
I just love your story in the sense and essence of, and you had acknowledged it with Adam, of how God places things in your life. And you're just like, that at the time didn't seem so significant, but it was a striking moment. And even with all of your experiences of how you expressed your childhood passions and then your pursuit, even in the journalism, it's all kind of nodding back to what you're doing now in so many different buckets, which we'll talk about. Was it always Ty's dream to race? Did he always know that was his path?
No, so he was raised in a huge NASCAR family in the sense that his grandfather is Richard Childress, and Richard Childress is still a NASCAR team owner, but probably most famously what put him on the map as an owner was that he was Dale Earnhardt's owner. There are so many documentaries and things you can watch about him and his story. And Richard started from nothing and then he became a team owner and has a really cool story. But when Dale Earnhardt raced for him is also when Dale won 8 championships, I believe, with Richard. And then also when he passed away at Daytona racing for Richard. So Richard was a team owner and on the map, but then I think that it has made him historically, I mean, Richard's one of the pillars of NASCAR, I believe. And he's a legend and he's incredible. So my mom is Richard's daughter, Tina, who I adore, is the best mother-in-law ever. She's a gift. And then her husband, Mike, raced NASCAR too. He raced for Richard and tried to pursue racing. And anyway, so that being said, Ty was, from the moment he was born, in 92, I mean, Richard was fully immersed in NASCAR. So Ty was raised around that. But anyway, sorry, long-winded there about Ty, how he got into racing. But Ty's parents, like I said, Tina, she and Mike, they were wanting those boys to pursue anything but. And so Ty was an amazing baseball player and he was in every single sport he could get his hands on. We're very alike in that way. He's very athletic. He wanted to play football was his thing. If I could have actually grown to my full size that he is now, so he was just like, man, what I wouldn't give to have pursued football. But anyway, when he turned 30 and he was doing, like I said, baseball, football, Pop Warner, all this stuff. When he turned 13, there was a race going on at Charlotte Motor Speedway. They were racing Bandoleros, and he was like, those look cool. I kind of want to try those. And they had tinkered around in go-karts when they were little kids, but not raced them in any like real races. So he's a real late entry to racing for a lot of people. And he's a huge testament to that you can start later because a lot of these kids from quarter midgets at 5 years old. You can do driver's training at 4 years old. I did driver's training and was racing at 5, and a lot of the big guys, Jeff Gordon, Joey Logano, a lot of these people started that way. But Ty and Austin, I guess Austin even later because he's older. So I think Austin was 15 and Ty was 13 when they started to actually pursue it. But the thing about Mike and Tina is if we're doing it full bore, full speed ahead, gonna give it our all. And they did. I mean, they raced 100 races a year. Wow. From the time he started to now. He's 33 now, so he's been racing for 20 years. But it wasn't until later. It was a little bit later for him. And I mean, by later, I'm still saying 13, but for a lot of them. And now it's funny because we're doing the same thing. Our son is so obsessed with racing. And we're just like, oh boy, let's get a golf club in his hand or a baseball bat, something a little less like
a golf club in his hand. That is so funny.
Can we get this kid playing something else?
But yeah, no, I love it. I love it. I love it. My podcast is all about living in sync with the season of life that you're in, because life changes. We don't know what's to come ahead of us. We really can go into these hindsight moments of the past, which I love so much, because I think this is going to transition us so very much into you sharing with us what your season of life is like right now, like age of your kids, where you're living, because you talked about how you grew up a West Coast girly, and now that's not necessarily the case. What is your day-to-day like? Because I told them in the beginning of this intro, all of the things they know. You're a mom of 3, you're an actress and actively working on projects. And I would imagine so many of the listeners are like, what is that world even like? NASCAR wife. Do you guys sleep, have days off, and add podcast hosts to the roster where you're interviewing these amazing women, so share with them a little bit about like life for you right now.
So none of it is possible without God. So literally, last week, it was one of the craziest days I've had in a while, because it was a touch of every single one of the things that I have going on in my life. We had talked about releasing the trailer, sort of the teaser for my podcast coming out. It was Ty's birthday, and I was filming that day. So it was like, what in the world? So many things going on. That morning I woke up, just a taste of a day like that I was having. That morning I woke up, had to get all of my stuff ready to go shoot that day. I'm shooting a show called Blue Ridge right now, where I play a bartender named Dixie, and I was gonna be shooting that day. I had shot the night before, so I had gotten home the night before at 9:30 at night. On my way home from shooting that night, I had picked up a birthday cake for Ty because his birthday was the next morning. So I wake up that morning, get my kids out of bed, get everything ready for Ty's birthday, get him a coffee. We come in, we're singing him happy birthday. He comes downstairs. We all have a piece of cake. We like sing happy birthday, do all of that. Then on a typical set where you are going to get hair and makeup and wardrobe, it's pretty easy. You just I take a shower, I bring my makeup just in case, and some hairspray and a curling iron just in case, because on this particular shoot I have a trailer, which is so fun.
Yeah,
makes me feel like such a star. It's so generous of them that they do that. They really don't need to do that, but they do. It's really it's the best crew I've worked with ever. But anyway, so then I was able to just sort of show up in something comfortable and just a fresh face, clean hair, and I bring my makeup and like hairspray and a comb and a curling iron just in case. Because you never know, what if, God forbid, like the makeup lady didn't get there and they're like, Haley, can you do your own makeup? You want to have it just in case. So then I go and I put out the trailer because I just was like, I'm going to do this. I don't want to, I'm going to, like I told you, rip the Band-Aid off because I was a little nervous to do it, but put the trailer out there. I'm sitting in hair and makeup, creating a reel for my husband's birthday, and then shooting. We ended up shooting a lot more that day than was intended. ended, we were only supposed to be shooting some reaction shots of us sitting in a crowd where we're watching a play happening. So nothing's actually happening, but they're getting some reaction shots of me and this other deputy in the show that were like supposed to be reacting to this, what's going on. And just cute. It's just like clapping and whatever. Well, then they decided to flip that and use us as the audience for then what they were going to shoot some takes on this stage. So the whole thing ended up taking about double the time that I thought was going to be. I thought it was just going to be a couple hours. I thought I was going to pick my kids up from school, which, by the way, I dropped my kids off at school and then went to set. So it was like,
yeah,
mom, actress, midday.
crazy.
Yeah, it was such a blessing. Like I'm telling you, the whole time I'm like, God, how are you making the time for this? And then I had dinner reservations at this bougie restaurant called Steak 48 in Charlotte. And so I had dinner reservations for his birthday that night. And I'm like calling him, babe, I don't know, we're shooting a lot more than I was like thinking we were going to shoot. And you can't be like, hey, I have to leave. Like you are at their mercy, which is totally fine, not hating on that at all. I'm just like, oh boy, this was different than what I thought, so you can't pick up and leave or anything. Not that you would ever want to. Every actor is, I'll be here as long as you need me, but I'm like, babe, I don't really know. I'll kind of keep posted. You might have to meet me there. You might have to bring me a fancy outfit. So then finally, I'm like, if we can wrap by 5:30, I said in my like mind, maybe a prayer, putting it out there. I'm like, if we can wrap by 5:30, I can go back, change, get in the car, drive home, change, get in the same car as Ty, and we can go together. Literally 5:30, that's a wrap. And we took some stage photos, and then I go to my trailer and change, sign out with them, get in my car, drive an hour home from the set where we were shooting that day, change my clothes. A babysitter comes over, Ty and I get in his truck and we go eat dinner and then get to have a birthday dinner. That was like when I was running from set to my trailer to change, I was literally saying to God, I do not know how you are making room for all of this in my life right now, but I am so grateful, so like laying it at his feet, like I can't do it. I don't know how it is happening.
I can chime in on this because I've talked about in the last 2 episodes, they're titled Pep Talks. And one of them really was centered around, I don't know how this is all going to work out. And I really think like God wants us to see it in that way of you have these dreams, these passions, these things on your heart that we all want to do, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's, a mom that's wanting to start getting into some sort of routine or volunteer at a church or start going to a Bible study or make more time for friends, whatever it is, but you're trying to do the computing in your own head of how is this possible? And I really think God is just trust and take it one day at a time, because the day that you just described, crazy, one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, every day also isn't like that. But each day you show up for the task at hand. And I've seen you in the short time we've known each other and worked together. That's how I've seen you operate, is even when I've had to text you something on the weekend while you're at a track, you're just like, no, it's fine. Just message me about it. I'm always like, sorry to bug you. Is that kind of one of your philosophies? Or do you even recognize like you kind of do just take it as it comes to you? Is that how you've always been? Or something you've had to learn?
I would say that for me, that is a way I've always been, because I was raised very much that way. It's funny because my dad is his own boss. And I think there's something to be said for that we were raised we make our own schedule. So my dad, if he had a job that happened to be like, hey, can I do this on a Saturday? Would you guys be okay with that? So I think in a way, it isn't something that has been shocking to me. It's funny, the lifestyle of racing, to so many of my friends, they're like, I do not know how you do it, in the sense that like the packing up, leaving, going for the weekend, and then coming home, and then having my kids go to school and doing all of these different things. But That very first time, and I didn't really finish about our like love story, but that very first time that Ty and I talked on the phone, I was like, how would we ever make that happen? And he was like, we'll just take it one day at a time. We'll figure it out. That was what he said. And literally we're married 10 years, been together 13 years. We'll figure it out. Like we definitely have morphed into that so much that it's just one day at a time, and we'll figure it out. And I will say, like you said, did I learn to be that way or did that come naturally to me? It came naturally to me to be that way, but I grew in my faith in that. I grew in the last 6 years. Ty and I have really found Jesus, and I have grown in, because if it's a Saturday, that's nothing. Come at me with what you got. I'm like always available, always working at whatever. But I'd say the faith and the laying that at God's feet, or trusting that he's the one making the plan, that I've grown in. Because right now, I mean, just trusting in him it's easier now because of the things that we've gone through that have been really hard, where we really were holding on so tight to them and we were trying to make these things happen. And when you see enough things happen that it's, whoa, that was so not me. That was so God. It really makes that grip loosen of, okay, these things that I think I have control over are so out of my control. And so I think that I've definitely grown in realizing that God's got me in his hands versus me having so much control over my own life, which was a fictitious thought that I had. And so I think that we've grown in that. I don't know. I think that like we've had quite a journey. Like what you were saying about tomorrow has enough trouble of its own, and sort of just putting one foot in front of the other. I think some of that also stems from, because all of this right now, it all seems really fun, really glitzy and glamorous, maybe from the outside, the things that we do, but all of it has stemmed from really, really rough times where that tree was pruned down to absolutely nothing. And where does stuff grow? In manure. And we've had a lot of really where we're just feeling like it's getting shoveled down onto us. And it's been, I don't want to do tomorrow, God. Or, where the enemy is like, look at your past or get you so worried about your future kind of thing. And where God just says, hey, worry about today. Tomorrow has enough trouble of its own. And I think that's Matthew 6:27, something in there, today is sufficient for its own troubles or something like that. And don't worry about tomorrow. And so I think that we've had a lot of things in our lives that, I can touch on and elaborate on that has made us go, okay, here and now. So I think that's the one foot in front of the other aspect that I kind of have too. It's, right now it's good stuff, but it stems from the moments that have been really, really difficult, where we've really had to literally put one foot in front of the other. And that's through the whole day,
And life experiences like that will always help you navigate things different in the future. Whether it be, I think a lot of the common things that are similar for everybody, but different flavors is like job changes and financial ups and downs. Like those are things we all go through. I mean, I remember one of the darkest times in our marriage was when I had severe postpartum with our first. And it was just like, I did not think parenting was going to be like this. But then I could sit here today, now that my oldest is almost 9, and I'm like, parenting is the best thing ever. He's the greatest. And I think back, man, what we went through when he was really young has shaped me with hindsight and more compassion and more trust and more faith in navigating harder times. Gosh, what you just shared right there was so mic drop for anybody who's really like thinking about, how do I juggle all of this? How do I navigate all of this while wanting to go after these things and wanting to do this, wanting to do that? So one of the questions I have for you with all of the things, because you're a mom of 3 little kids, like your kids are still really little. And how would you say that you pour back into your cup? What are the things that you do for you? And are they grandiose or are they just kind of like little moments that kind of fill back into you?
Yeah, they are little moments. They're not grandiose. I might get a grandiose day, but what I'm talking is, babe, will you watch these kids while I just go to TJ Maxx and, I'm going to run through Starbucks before and I'm just going to peruse every single aisle. I highly recommend this to anyone, except maybe the TJ Maxx workers might get mad at me. One of my favorite things that feels really therapeutic. And I do therapy. So this is on top of the therapy. Will go through TJ Maxx. I will just go ham. Anything that I'm like, oh, I'm buying this and I'm buying this and I'm buying this, and I will load up my cart so full. And then I'll look at the line and I'm with no intention, but I'm like, and then I push my cart over into a hidden corner and I leave and I walk out and I don't buy any of it. And it just is, I just saved myself money. It's like such this silly girl math thing. But then I also got to have all of the joy of putting it in my cart. Like I got the retail therapy out of it and then also saved myself money because you don't need any of it, but it just feels good.
Yeah.
It just feels good to get the Easter Bunny candle holder and the new workout set. And you get like all the silly stuff, the eye masks and whatever. And then you're like, I don't need any of it. And you walk out. So that's funny. That is something that I feel like is almost a grandiose gesture for me of how I pour into my cup. And don't get me wrong, I do check out a lot of the time at TJ Maxx, but I do have the TJ Maxx card. No, but one of the things that I do, Ty and I, at the end of the day, after we've put our kids to bed, we go our separate ways for a little while. He goes into one room. We kind of have, it's like a man cave-ish type of room for him. And he's going to be like, babe, you can't tell people that, but he'll play Call of Duty or something with his friends. And they're in there like talking crap to each other. It's just funny. And then I will go into our room and I'll just watch a show, watch something, and I can just kind of like chill. In the morning time, when my son goes down for a nap, I will get a second cup of frothy coffee. And it's just the little things like that. Like
I'm all
just sitting
about that. I'm
and
all about
taking a
that.
moment.
Whether it's like the
Yeah.
self-care or the marriage stuff, there's always the grandiose, make time for date night, make time for date night. And trust me,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have friends who have older kids, and our friends with older kids are like, that time comes when you look at each other on Friday night and you're like, this kid's there, that kid's there, it's just us. Like they have told us, like
Yeah.
that season does come around. But I remember in social media, it's always just do the date night, do the date night. Well, that means the mom has to find the babysitter and the this and the that and the
Mhm.
getting the logistics of all of that. But when I started really thinking both self care and connection in marriage to be those micro moments, I
Yeah.
swear that's been the thing that has poured more into our marriage now, where it's, at the end of the day, it's so funny. Sean and Ty sound so similar because get you a man that does it all. Because my husband can game with the best of them. And that does work in your favor when your boys want to start playing video games and your husband's, let's check it
Oh
out.
yeah.
And then your husband's, no, that one is trash, but let's do this one. And then the boys want to play the one, but then they also see the balance of dad's a hard worker. I'm sure Ty very much too is mechanically inclined, wants to go and do the activities and all of the other things where it's like just being well-rounded. I love that.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Ty's like that, but that's what Sean is. He's very well-rounded. But at the end of the day, we find so much fun in just sometimes we turn the TV on, but sometimes we'll just sit there and talk to each other at the end of the day. It's also different when your kids are a little bit older because
Yeah.
when the kids are doing their own thing in the evening and you don't have to worry about them literally injuring themselves for existing because they're not a toddler anymore,
Yeah.
you can have more connection points. And this year, we both had the intention of getting up and working out in the morning. And I would say we hit 3 to 4 days of that. But the other mornings, we're just sitting there drinking our caffeine of choice. And it ends up like we end up talking. Do 10 out of 10 recommend though on Netflix? They put Home Improvement back out
Oh
on
my gosh.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Haley, you and Ty will just die laughing at it because watching it again
Yeah.
as a parent is so hilarious. And
Oh,
then, of course,
probably
like,
so different.
yes. And of course, the Tim the Toolman Taylor jokes still hit just as hard as they did back then. I mean, season one was really like, oh, this is what took off, but we love laughing at the end of
Yeah.
the day together. And it'll bring up like, oh, I remember watching this episode and thinking this or that. Or, sometimes we both just are so tired and fall asleep. But 10 out of 10, all of you listening to, like watching Home Improvement at the end of the day is just one of
Yeah.
those feel good shows to end
Oh,
on.
we have to start it. That's
You
so
have
good.
you have to. And for me, it's like when I started realizing that pouring back into my cup was like when the kids are off to school, I then go
Mhm.
upstairs and get myself ready for the day, listen to an audio book of something that I want to learn
Yeah.
about or something like that. Another like little touch point of self-care was like, yeah, it's not selfish or a waste of time or I need to be productive always, when it was like, oh, I wanted to get my nails done or I wanted to do those things, but
Mhm.
also recognizing that those things aren't sufficient enough and having the profound faith first is what pours in, because I don't
Yeah.
have to worry, like circling back to what you said, I don't have to
Yeah.
worry about what's ahead. I don't have to worry about the troubles of tomorrow. And then also with the time and experience, you start to realize like those things that are stressors you may worry about can be things you laugh off. Because last week I sent my kids to school in their dress up clothes days, like they had theme days. It was this
Yeah.
week. So not only did they dress up last week, I picked them up from school on Friday because also the bus, this is going way off topic, you guys, but I know my listeners will laugh because they know me. But like I'm pretty type A, but I have a type B about me. And when I go type B, I laugh. And I get a call from the teacher Fridays. Oh, they're not riding the bus. I'm like, well, they're supposed to be on that bus. Like, why aren't they on the bus? They're like, we communicated that bus didn't have a driver. So yeah, you want to come get them? And I'm like, yeah. So I'm walking into the school, like already feeling great as a mom because my kids are waiting in the
Yeah.
office for me to pick them up because I didn't know there was no bus services going. And I walk in and I'm like,
Oh,
how was
no.
pajama day? They go, that wasn't today. That's next Friday. And I go, so both of you are in your pajamas all day? Yep. And
Not
I
only
walk.
the pajamas, but what were your thoughts on Wacky Hair Wednesday? Did you just think like pajamas might be one that's believable? Maybe that they just wore their pajamas today, I guess. But what about,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
son had Wacky Wednesday today,
Yeah.
Wacky Hair Wednesday.
Yeah. That's what it
That
is
is
today, too.
so
So they went
funny.
with last week's hair today. And, it's just those things in life where you're like, okay, there are things to take very seriously. And there are so many things where we just have to stop taking them so seriously. And I think
Yeah.
the whole like picture perfect self care, the whole picture perfect date night and picture perfect marriage. And I was actually even talking to another gal we were talking about how do you find your person? And this was with a single gal in mind. And I said, I think it
Yeah.
really hones in on values. So whether,
Yeah.
you are going through easy breezy waters in marriage or motherhood or career, life, mental health, if it feels easy breezy right now, knowing that like holding the values you have in your heart. And if you are with a person that shares those deep rooted values, that you're in
Mhm.
the boat together and you can navigate things and you can set the sails in different directions. And sometimes you're going to really have to work hard to keep navigating through those tough times, but to
Yeah.
continue to hold strong to it. It's the big and the small things in life that happens to everybody. And I think this was just a really cool conversation. So to round it out and end it off, what is something about NASCAR that you think, like most of us, I would say majority of my listeners don't know much about NASCAR, but For
Yeah.
those of us outside of NASCAR, what's something about the sport that you want to share with us? Like maybe one thing that's really glamorous and one thing where you're like, oh my gosh, only in NASCAR does this.
One thing that people probably don't think about is when Ty comes back after the race, he will be so sweaty. I'm talking his driver's suit will be like he just dipped it in a pool and pulled it out, and so sweaty, wet. And then it's like something that I'm having to scoop up and put in a garbage bag and take and give it to the guy that's going to wash it. And it's always just so attractive. It's also something people always ask, like, how do they go to the bathroom? I'm like, a lot of them pee their pants in their suit, like while they're driving. And Ty will not pee his pants, though. He refuses. And he will be in pain. He will be in so much pain when he gets out of the car and like trying to get to a bathroom because he won't just pee his pants in his car. I'm like, I would pee my pants in my car every single time. Like one of
I had to
friends,
pull over. I had to figure something out when I was a mom.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah,
I'm like,
I know, right? Like they don't have the kid potty in the back of their car that they can pull over and be like, just give me a minute. Yeah, no, they most of them just pee their pants, and Ty has this mental block about it. One of the other wives, her husband, that's so funny. I interviewed her. I won't say which one. He is just know that if it's a red flag, I'm peeing my pants. He looks forward to it.
How long are the races?
They're about 5 hours. Yeah, they're about 4 to by the time they get in their car to it being over, it's over 4 hours.
That's some bladder endurance right there. I would have never thought
NASCAR drivers, they're drinking the whole time, because they want to stay hydrated. So a lot of them are really, really hot races. Their cars will be 150 degrees. I mean, 150 degrees. It's insane.
And then they have their big helmet on. The heat cannot escape.
Mm-hmm. They do have a cool shirt. It's basically a wired suit wired with water, and it tries to cool it. I mean, it's not cold, but it's a little bit better. And then they have an air tube connected to their helmet that does kind of blow some fresh air from outside. Otherwise, it gets very exhausty. But there's been many races that both of those things have not worked for Ty, and he's fallen out of the car and had to go to infield care. One thing that is a perk that we talk about in racing, and this is such a weird particular thing, is that they do have infield care there for anyone at the racetrack. Anyone, somebody that's staying there in a tent to watch the race for the weekend. I mean, anybody can go to infield care, and a lot of the drivers do, and a lot of the wives do. I was pregnant with Bear, and early on I was having some bleeding. I had a subchorionic hemorrhage. I don't know if any, listener might know specifically what that is, but basically my placenta hadn't like fully attached, and you get a little bit of a hematoma and then it'll bleed, sometimes a lot, sometimes just a little bit. So I was having a little bit of bleeding and I was freaked out, and I went to infield care. They had an ultrasound in there. And I mean, the reason I say all of this is so cool is because it's free. We just go and we get the IVs and whatever it is that you may need. I mean, one of my friends, Brittany, was so super sick when she was pregnant with hyperemesis, I think. She was just so sick, and she got an IV at infield care. I mean, Ty will get them at the end of a race, and that's something we're like, man, infield care is so nice. We joke that we will save our sicknesses for the weekend so we can go get them checked out at infield care, so we don't have to work, because you can literally walk in and they are so nice. And it's funny because they're for the whole entire racing situation going on. So like I said, there will be people that after a race, a lot of the times, we were in Homestead a couple years ago, and Ty's cool shirt and air fan on his helmet stopped working. Both of them stopped working. So he was just roasted, and he got out and he's like, take me to infield care. I'm going to get an IV. Actually, I was like, just go to infield care and get an IV. You'll feel so much better.
Pushing him into there.
So he's in there. There was some lady that had a broken arm because she had fallen and gotten, I don't know, a lot of drunk people at NASCAR races too. That's a little interesting. So, but there was like some woman that had a broken arm, and then, it was just interesting. It's a full on, they can take on anything you got, and they may transfer you to a hospital, but that's a weird perk that no one probably even knows exists in racing.
That's pretty
I
cool
don't
though.
know.
But it also makes me even think of like different jobs. We're talking to my son just with him being interested in football right now. Like how many really cool jobs there is within the organization of the NFL itself and the
Yeah,
team. And so I'm even thinking to that would be even a cool job if you are a nurse or something and you don't want
right.
that traditional hospital setting, but oh, I'm a nurse for
Yeah,
like the NASCAR races. What? That's
for the
cool.
NASCAR circuit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be
it
so
is. It
cool.
is such a cool specific realm of healthcare that you could work in. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know how they get their jobs in that specific world doing it for racing, but man, we're grateful for them. We've been in there for all sorts of different weird things over the 13 years, and they are amazing and like fully capable. It's not just like well, we'll see what we can do. Like I said, they had an ultrasound machine
Yeah.
and they were like, there's your baby. And
With
it
your
just gave me such peace of mind. I was in
oh,
Talladega.
yeah. With your kids and the track, are they or even maybe if they just like observing around you, do kids kind of get desensitized to the coolness of what it is? Do they ever have the
Yeah.
attitude of I do not want to go to another race again? Why are we here? Like,
We kind of coordinate the races that the kids go to around the MRO Motor Racing Outreach. It's a really cool group that takes a hauler to a track. They have a big tent off to the side, and it's filled with tons of fun toys for all of the kids. And during the race, you can check in your child to MRO if as long as they're potty trained. Even if you got a fresh baby and you're like, hey, I've brought Bear over there, and I'm like, hey, Julie, will you just hold him while I take a shower and don't have him crying in the background? She's, oh my God, get my hands on that baby. Like they're amazing. So we do try to kind of coordinate around MRO, but there is things, it's funny, Oakley has been traumatized because of all of the driver intros that we've brought her to. Driver intros are the whole, they introduce the drivers, they do the national anthem. Usually there's a flyover, there's fireworks. So she's experienced a lot of very loud, very low fireworks and stuff. And so she doesn't like it. I mean, literally the president, the what is Air Force One or whatever that the president flies was the flyover of the Daytona 500, and Oakley was just like, I'm like, this is kind of insane that
yeah.
this is the flyover. I mean, it's the president and all his people. Like, that's insane. But it's funny. The kids will get desensitized to things like that and not even want to go out. And the other thing, though, that is interesting on the flip side of that is I think this is the first year that my middle son understands what his dad does. He
Uh,
is so into it. And I think Oakley too. So not everybody's dad is on TV and not everybody's dad does a job like this. What does your dad do? She's now at the age where she's like, "Oh, okay, wow, this is a pretty big deal." And it is funny though, the things that they are desensitized to. One thing that my kids absolutely love is flying commercial, which most people don't like flying commercial. They love to fly commercial. I mean, if you've had the option to fly private, flying commercial doesn't sound as great. We fly on these NASCAR chartered planes most weekends, and so we don't have to go through TSA. They're not glamorous planes, but it's nice that you just pretty much show up and put your bag in and show them your ID and you get on the tarmac, and it's funny because our kids have become a bit desensitized to that. And when we were headed to the airport for a race, they're like, are we going to the big airport where we can go through kind of like the mall? And because they like to go to the Hudson News and get a get some gummy bears and then go on the plane? I'm like, no, we're just on the plane that you just walk straight on. Sorry,
Yeah.
guys.
And they're
Most
like,
people would find
oh,
that pretty cool.
oh man. But like you said, with the air service, like you're getting on this small plane with a lot of other people and everything like that. That's so funny. I was chuckling so hard at that where you're like, we're coming back from the race and my youngest had gummy bears all over his butt, like just
Oh yeah.
gummy bears everywhere. I'm like,
Oh, he
mom
gets up
right
and I'm like,
fumbles you.
when did this happen? Yeah, I mean, just that he had obviously he fell asleep on him and they had just melted all over his butt. And I was like, we're trying to like get it off the seat. I'm like, I'm so sorry. The gummy bears. Yeah.
Oh, this has been a wonderful conversation, you guys. I will make sure to link below Haley's podcast, obviously YouTube, where we're putting up the video episodes, and your Instagram as well. It is so cool to hear, you share and interview these amazing women from different walks of life, hearing about them, their stories, their passions, and then also these really cool insights to the sport of NASCAR because as I mean, NASCAR was not on my radar other than growing up. And I'm sure this is not coined by us by any means, but we always had joked that dad was watching NAPCAR on Sunday because he'd start off watching the race, fall asleep, wake up for the end of it. And so now it's been just really cool to get to know you. Your family is just absolutely the sweetest. And I thank you so much for coming on to my podcast and sharing about your guys' story.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like we could talk all day. It's been so great getting to know you, and you have been one of those God winks, one of those things where everything for me is just, wow, this is happening so easy with this podcast, and this is must be a very God-breathed thing, but it's definitely been due to a lot of very hard work from you. So I really appreciate it. And yeah, this has been so fun. And NAPCAR, tell me about it. I mean, my husband's in it and I'm nodding off sometimes, so I get it.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you loved what you heard or you want to share your favorite episode topics, please leave a rating and review. This helps the podcast growth and gives people an idea of what the podcast is all about. Something new and exciting that I wanted to share with you before we go is that we now have a Patreon page. This has replaced the Feminine Edge collective community in a cohesive place that is easier for me to manage and cheaper for you. If you are interested in our monthly classes, exclusive day in the life vlogs, Bible studies, community Q&A, and more, go to patreon.com/livingInSync and join for just $5 a month. Check out the show notes for any links or details of things referenced in today's episode, and I look forward to chatting with you in the next one.